In this video today, I'm going to teach you how I coach the kettlebell windmill. Hey guys, John here from JK Conditioning. When first learning the kettlebell windmill, you gotta know where the front loaded position is with the kettlebell before you can even get the kettlebell overhead. So when front loading the kettlebell, there are two ways to get it in that position. You can take two hands, grab your kettlebell, and then just turn it so that it sits right here. So this is called the front loaded position with a kettlebell, or the front racked position. Two key things to think about and notice here is that the wrist is actually in a nice straight line like this. The fingers don't have to do anything, and the kettlebell sits with the handle in a diagonal position inside the hand here. So what you'll notice is that the wrist can stay straight and the kettlebell sits on top of the forearm, and then on the side here you can see that it's cradled in what's called the triangle of the upper and lower hand. If you know how to do a kettlebell swing, you can then learn how to do a kettlebell clean. So a kettlebell swing with one hand, if I show you this way, so the kettlebell swing with one arm looks like this. So you don't need to see my hips right now. I want you to notice that my armpit approaches about a 90-degree position here at the top of the swing. But that's not what you want to do when you do a clean. When you do the kettlebell clean, you actually have to keep the kettlebell really close to your body, and you want to keep your elbow touching your sides so that when the kettlebell comes up, you can push your hand through the handle, which will then force the kettlebell to turn over your arm and then be received in that front loaded position. So what that looks like here, so again, just notice the difference between a kettlebell swing with a 90-degree angle at the armpit versus that. So the kettlebell doesn't go very far because I keep my elbow in tight with my sides, because that keeps the kettlebell really close to my body. If I did a kettlebell swing into a clean, I'm gonna get a lot of kickback from the kettlebell and I'm gonna get pushed backwards. So if I go swing clean and then pull back, I'm actually gonna get thrown backwards because the kettlebell has to go out, but then I have to pull it in, and that's gonna throw you off balance, and that's not gonna be a great way to do the clean. From the front view, it looks like this. So kettlebell here, pull, and then that's how you front load it. Come down like that. So you can see it takes a lot of practice to figure out this position here, but that doesn't mean that you can't learn it. But anyways, that's the first thing you gotta do with a kettlebell windmill, is learning where that front loaded position has to be with that kettlebell. Next, let's get into the overhead position and then how to actually do the kettlebell windmill. So the next thing you have to do after you get the front loaded position is actually get the kettlebell overhead. So you can do this by doing a push press or a press or a jerk. Anyways, you want to get the weight overhead and then you want to lock it in position. You got to have good shoulder mobility to get this position here where the ribs are down. If you have poor shoulder mobility, what that means is that you can't actually get your arm any more vertical than somewhere here. And what happens is, to get vertical, you'll have to lean back a lot through your back. You'll have to arch your back to get your arm vertical. And what that tells us is that your shoulder mobility is lacking. It could be related to just tight pecs or tight lats. It could also be related to a tight thoracic spine. We need to have good mobility through the thoracic spine to allow the arm to extend overhead. So if you don't have that range of motion, I don't allow anyone to do anything with a locked arm overhead, because you don't have that range of motion. So you haven't really earned the right to load that pattern or that press. So what that means is no kettlebell windmills for you until you fix your mobility. But let's assume that you have good mobility. So after getting that kettlebell overhead, let's talk about the stance and what the hinge looks like when doing the kettlebell windmill. So I'm gonna cut my head off here, but that doesn't matter. What I want you to do now, after you have the kettlebell overhead, let's get into the proper stance when doing the kettlebell windmill. So if the kettlebell's in your right hand, so let's start with your feet shoulder width apart to start, okay? So if you got the kettlebell in your right hand, the right arm is locked above your head, you're gonna take a slightly wider step with your left foot and then turn your left foot out to the side. You're gonna keep your other leg straight. So your right leg straight, left leg turned out to the side. And with that other arm, you're gonna put it on the inside of the groin on the left side. So left hand, inside of the left groin. And now what you're gonna do is you're just gonna slowly bow forward, okay? And I'm dragging my arm down the inside of my leg. Now what you'll notice here is that this leg, the right leg has to stay straight and the left leg has to bend so that I can hinge properly with that weight held above my body like this. So what you'll notice is that you're gonna feel a pretty good stretch in the hamstrings, you'll feel good tension here, because what that means is that you're moving through your hips. This is very important because when you're in this position, so essentially here's the bottom of the windmill. So depending on your range of motion, you could go fingertip to ground, you could go fist to ground, you could go palm to ground. It just depends on your mobility. But what's important is, if you look at my back, if I can show you right there, if I round my back like this, then the stress goes through my back and this is a very ugly windmill. So we don't want to look like that. So based on your flexibility through your hips, you'll only go to a range of motion where you can control the spine shape. So if your spine shape loses neutral, then you can't go any lower than that. If you find your mobility through the hips a little bit more restricted, you can take a bigger stance and then move through the hips this way. So again, you just have to modify it to suit your current ability so that you can do the exercise safely and obviously not cause any harm. All right, so let's look at the top half of the body. So we just looked at the legs and the stance and the knee that's soft and the knee that's straight and how to hinge through the hips without changing the back. So let's look at what happens with the upper body. So from the front loaded position, we have our kettlebell here, press it up. So now we have the arm locked with a neutral back position. So you can see again how if I said, get the kettlebell up any way you can, and then, if you don't have the good mobility, your ribs are gonna go up. Like I said earlier, the ribs will go up, the back will arch. Not a good position to be in. So keep your ribs down, get your stance, and now the moment that you bend, you have to look up at the weight. Because if you don't look up at the weight, you're gonna lose track of the weight and you might drop it, which is obviously something you don't wanna do. So after you get your stance, you're going to look up at the weight, you're gonna hinge, keep your arm vertical. The goal of the exercise is to go through a range of motion that you can do safely, but then keep your arm vertical to support weight, because if the arm goes down any angle like this, you're more likely to drop the weight. So if we turn the camera vertical, then you can see the entire exercise. So from the beginning, we go into our shoulder width apart stance. Now there's two ways, I'm gonna add that there's two ways to do the clean. You can go with your thumb turned in, so that's an internally rotated shoulder position, which looks like this, okay? So you lead with the thumb, pull in, and then get into your front loaded position. That's one way to do the clean. The other way to do the clean is with your thumb forward, okay? So same idea, the elbow has to stay tight with the sides, like this. So that's just another way to do it. So whatever you prefer, choose that technique. Front loaded position, press the weight up. So it's in my right arm, left foot out, left knee soft. I'm going to look up at the weight. I'm gonna bow through my hips and keep my arms straight. I'm gonna keep my back straight, and I'm going to reach the kettlebell up. I'm reaching my knuckles towards the ceiling to keep my position, and then after this, I'm gonna brace my abs, and then come up, and then now I'm in the starting position again. So here's a few reps. it, guys. That's how I coach the kettlebell windmill. Some of you may be thinking, well, what is a kettlebell windmill good for? It's a great exercise at training shoulder strength and shoulder stability. It's a great core stability exercise because you're going essentially into a side plank position, and it's also great at training your hip extensors because you have to hinge through the hips to get down and then to stand yourself up. If you found the video useful, give it a thumbs up. If this is your first time here, we make videos to improve your workouts. We try to release videos twice a week, so make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date. Until next time, guys, we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.